So that is one of the questions there is for you, Soham, that, for a busy person, for example, a mom, who's busy all day running around, what are some practical tips for making right, healthy choices that guide your patients with, I'm sure.
Yeah, so as I said, we want to first be very honest and write down where we are in terms of what our food patterns are.
Hmm.
And once we know where we are, then there are two ways that I commonly, suggest. One, you can start with a particular meal and modify that meal every day of the week, and then once you get comfortable with that meal, then you tackle the next meal. So for example, you go for overnight oats loaded with rolled or still cut oats and some fresh fruit and some raisins, and top it off with some nut milk and some cinnamon, some cardamom.
Yeah.
um, and That's one way you can pre-plan. You can make those bowls uh, together and then put it in the refrigerator, so every morning you just take out the bowl and eat that, and that would last you 3-4 days easily. And then you
Hmm.
make it again, so that way just doing that 15-20 minute prep twice a week, you can easily tackle your breakfast.
Hmm.
And you can be creative with what you put in every of those bowls. You are not feeling like you're eating the same thing every day. You had some variety
Yeah.
on a weekly basis. Or the second approach is you target a particular day that you try to say, okay, I'm going to make it completely plant based, and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which will be all plant foods. Breakfast, like I mentioned, or just a bowl of fruits with some walnuts or some hemp seeds. And the lunch would be a good serving of some beans with vegetables and some brown rice. And dinner could be a chickpea pasta with lots of vegetables and some tomato sauce, and skipping any cheese, and just loading up with lots of things like zucchini, squash, peppers, onions, mushrooms, um, broccoli, leafy greens. So I'm just kind of blurting out your options here, but uh, those are two common ways. And if you feel no, that's still too much for me to handle, I need to make smaller changes, then just starting with making sure you're having at least two fruits every day, and then next week say, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm going to add two vegetables in my daily routine every day, and keep incrementally going up on that. So we can keep the goal post as small or as big as fits your schedule or routine. But the key is to make sure we find out where we are, and then try to put a bigger goal and see where we want to go, and then break down that journey into smaller changes and tackle one at a time. So that way you don't feel like you're making a million changes and feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
and you get more and more comfortable, and as you become more comfortable, it becomes less stressful. So
Right.
then you're not stressing, you're enjoying the process.
Right.
So
Right. Right, right, wonderful. No, thank you for sharing that. And another question for you, Soham, is about belly fat. I mean, that's something I think as we age, this is a community of all different ages, and as we age, that becomes one of the main issues. And I think the gut microbiome is kind of related to that. So there is a question around Um, how to tackle that. I know you actually mentioned that as your own experience, how you were able to get rid of it. But what would you suggest to someone who is?
so there are, I think I can pretty much talk half an hour on that
I
itself,
know.
but I'll try to concise it into a few main things. So one, as I mentioned, when you eat, if you eat later in the night, in the evening hours, or obviously late night, you are definitely packing more calories on your into fat onto your belly. So
Mm,
you want to avoid that. Make sure that 6 or 7 p.m. is a pretty hard stop for you to eat any food. After
mm,
that, you should not eat any food.
mm,
Number two, making sure that you are focusing, again, step by step, nothing overnight, but focusing on improving your sleep hygiene,
mm,
having a good, relaxing music, some light reading, no TV for at least half an hour, maybe an hour before bedtime.
Mhm.
and really try to get sleep before midnight, ideally around 10. But if you're waking beyond midnight, then at least start going to sleep before midnight, because if you sleep at the right time, your circadian rhythm, the hormone changes that happen in the body, is
Yeah.
a lot different than if you sleep late at night, and even if you sleep the same number of hours. So uh, you focus on the right time of the sleep and the quality of the sleep, which also helps you lose that fat buildup. Activity also plays a role, but you're making sure that you're eating the right foods and synergizing it with the activity. Again, it doesn't mean you spend an hour in the gym. It could be as simple as going for a 20-minute walk every day, or a 20-minute jog, or if you like a sport, then playing that. Doing something that you enjoy doing, that's the key. If you spend an hour in the gym but you hate every minute of being there, it is actually going to show you the opposite effect, because your body will pump more cortisol and you will be frustrated because you don't see a single pound coming off.
Mm.
So do something that you enjoy doing, not just doing something because you need to do that.
Right, right, right. No, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. There are a few medical questions, like that you will be the best one to answer. So, for example, if you are insulin dependent, someone wants to know how will you follow intermittent fasting? I know that Bipin, I think, mentioned he is insulin. He wasn't, sort of diabetic when he first started the intermittent fasting. But I will let you.
So, yeah, number one, you want to make sure that you are talking with your physician, uh, your primary care or your endocrinologist, and making sure you're making them aware of what you're planning to do,
Mm,
and ask them. And again, I think it's a little difficult zone. There are still many physicians who don't support intermittent fasting or fully understand that,
mm,
and you may get an answer saying no, you should not be doing that, and discouraged. But so again, I don't have control on that. But um, your sugars have to be monitored very closely, so at least checking it fasting and then before every meal 2 3 times a day.
mm,
And as your sugar starts coming down, you
mm.
should have a plan to actually cut back on your insulin. So
Right.
yes, you can do that, and never ever would you do insulin if you're not eating for a mealtime, obviously. So if you're taking a fast-acting insulin, and if you're not eating because you're fasting, then obviously you're not going to take fast-acting insulin. But
Mm,
even your long-acting insulin that you may be taking Lantus or Basaglar or Tresiba, Toujeo, I'm just blurting out the common names of the common long-acting insulins, those will also need to be reduced if you decide to do intermittent fasting.
right.
So you may need a 10, 20, 30% reduction based on how fast or how soon you respond to that. So again, you want to have a plan with your physician so that you can do it in a very safe manner. It is possible. It is not at all impossible. It is definitely possible. It just needs a proper plan and structure.
I, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. There's another one from Richard. He wants to know how can he reduce his H1A levels just by exercising and food. His current levels are 6.9. But he's regularly exercising and very fit. So, what can.
So, as I say all the time, if you cannot outrun or out exercise a bad diet, you could be working out or be very fit, but if you're not eating the right foods, you will not get the results you're looking for.
Love that. That's a great.
Um, Again, I'll focus back on the protein centric way of doing things. People are focused too much on protein. Even if they're plant based, they may have a bunch of protein powders that they're ingesting, shakes and whatnot. We don't need that. We need to focus on eating actual foods. They all have different varieties of protein. If you're eating enough volume of food, you get enough protein. There is no dearth. And if you focus on the right foods and at the right time of the day and combine it with activity, there is definitely great success in improving your A1C and steadily coming off your medications. But you want to work synergistic. You don't want to. That's where I will go back to a common trend that is currently going on, which is keto It's not new, it's just a repackaged version of Atkins diet.
Mhm.
But the real benefit that people may see initially when they do keto is, one, they're stopping all the crap that are eating before, the processed foods, so that helps.
Yeah.
But they really focus on the intermittent fasting aspect of things. So you're eating still, in my mind, not optimal foods, because you're still eating high fat, high protein foods and
Right.
limiting the carbohydrates, which is still needed for the body.
Right.
But you may see weight loss and you may see sugar numbers getting better initially, but then it won't last. There are studies done head to head trials at NIH, which have actually shown that insulin resistance gets worse even in a matter of few weeks. So the idea is to eat the right foods, predominantly plant based, doesn't have to be 100%, but close to 80, 90%. A lot of fiber at the right time, not too late, and combine it with the right activity, and you can easily get the sugars going down.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I will actually connect that to a question that there is for Bipin, because the diet part is what you're emphasizing to, to sort of control. Not, I love your quote. You can't out exercise or outrun a bad diet. I love that. I think that that's such an important sort of takeaway from this. And so Bipin, for you, someone wants to know, when you are eating for that 1 hour, what type of foods are you primarily focusing on? If you can share quickly.
The short answer is mostly plant-based food.
Mm.
That's basically what I was doing. In fact, if you go back to Dr. Patel's slide, which showed that colorful slide with all the different things,
I
that's
know.
what I'm eating. I mean, there is actually, I had not seen that slide before. And then I look at it and say, I can map almost everything I'm eating onto that slide. Now, the interesting thing which I found out was the issue which normally comes up, and it came up with me. I cannot be eating the same thing day after day, because I might get bored. So
Mm,
what I started doing is I started researching cuisines around the world to
mm,
see what are the Moroccans eating and what are the Italians eating and what are the Chinese eating and what are the Indians eating and all that for centuries, right?
mm,
And
mm,
I basically synthesized that information and I said, okay, let me make my meal plan so that I'm eating couscous based meal one day. The next day I'm eating polenta based meal. The third day I would be eating millets and yeah, those kind of things which come from India. Uh,
mm,
so I started making sure that there is a variety of food that I'm eating. Although it happens to fall in the same group, it maps onto the same slide that Dr. Patel was showing.
mm.
But it actually made my meals absolutely delicious and delectable. That it's enjoyment to eat that.
Yeah.
So I was not shortchanging myself on how much I was eating and what I was eating.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So just to kind of tie it in, there's one question about juicing. Whenever we talk about plant-based and diet, juicing always comes up. So any quick thoughts, recommendations on that?
Again, it's a pretty long topic, but I'll do be
I
very
know,
concise. So
I know.
fiber is the key.
Mm,
Now, juicing may have value if you're trying to detox.
mm,
So let's say you're doing water fasting and then you're slowly introducing some green juices the next day, and then some fruit juices for one day, and then slowly go back to cooked foods, and likewise that is okay. But to say that you're going to keep juicing fruits on a daily basis, especially if you're diabetic, is not advisable, because you're missing out on the fiber and you're going to get a big spike of sugar, which is going to cause more requirement for insulin. Now there are some things out there that people who do a mono diet where they just eat one type of fruit, or they just juice one fruit for 10 days.
mm,
Again, your body may get used to processing only some one type of food, so it may become very efficient. And because you're just eating one fruit for 10 days, your body is very accustomed and is not having to utilize much energy. So there is value to that, but it should be done in a very monitored manner. I
mm,
wouldn't recommend it as a generalized advice. There
mm.
is value to it in a very particular situation. But again, the idea is to the green juicing should be okay a few times a week as a detox, but you want to make sure you're focusing on a lot of fiber rich foods. and
Yeah.
avoid fruit juicing as much as possible.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I see that in my family. So my, anytime we want to have smoothies, actually more than juicing, smoothies. I add more vegetable, and my daughter says, "Gosh, what kind of smoothie is this? What are you feeding me?" But if I
So,
add a lot of fruits, it's like, wow, this is delicious. So it tends to be like,
so smoothie is quick and you can pack in a lot more fruits and vegetables than you would consume.
yeah,
But my one caveat there is
yeah,
that if you are doing it in a sustained routine every day, like replacing a whole meal with a
no,
smoothie every day, then you will still get faster delivery of the fructose to the liver than you would if you had to actually eat that fruit and chew it and break it down and metabolize. So
totally,
periodically, it's fine to have a fruit vegetable smoothie,
yeah,
but to make it part of your daily routine would actually, it's better than juice because you still have the fiber,
right.
but it doesn't beat eating the actual food and chewing it down.
True. No, I totally agree. Completely agree. So with that, thank you so much.